It's 6 p.m. Eastern in New York City. It's time for the Daily Wrap. And welcome to the show, everybody. Tonight we have an all-male panel on the Daily Wrap. I believe that's a first, and probably for good reason. First, he was GQ's Man of the Year, really, in 1979. And is currently a Sirius XM radio star and Forbes columnist. Rick Unger, everybody.
Who brought the cigars and the scotch?
That's for after the show. And without a doubt, our next panelist is probably the toughest on the set. Former Navy SEAL, author of Battle on the Home Front, and he also ran for Congress. Carl Higbie is here. Thank you, Carl. And finally, he is a popular television and radio commentator, not to mention has 3, count them, New York Times best-selling books under his belt. Ellis Hennigan is here.
Terrific. You know, it requires tough and tender.
Tough and tender.
I want to look under your belt.
Pen and the sword.
Without further ado, this is your daily download. Well, for the past few days, the president has been meeting with Muslim leaders and others to discuss how to deal with ISIS. If you've watched this show lately, you know we've been talking a lot about the president refusing to call out ISIS and other terror groups killing in the name of Allah as Islamic radicals. So, why won't the commander-in-chief bring Islam into the debate? Well, because no religion is responsible for terrorism, as you'll hear here.
Of course, the terrorists do not speak for over 1 billion Muslims who reject their hateful ideology. They no more represent Islam than any madman who kills innocents in the name of God represents Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism. No religion is responsible for terrorism. People are responsible for violence and terrorism.
And today, the president continued with that rhetoric by noting the West is not at war with Islam.
The notion that the West is at war with Islam is an ugly lie. And all of us, regardless of our faith, have a responsibility to reject it.
So who are we really at war with, Mr. President? If we are not fighting in the name of religion, why does ISIS continue to grow with followers? Let's listen.
When people, especially young people, feel entirely trapped in impoverished communities, where there is no order and no path for advancement, where there are no educational opportunities, where there are no ways to support families, and no escape from injustice and the humiliations of corruption, that feeds instability and disorder and makes those communities ripe for extremist recruitment. And we have seen that across the Middle East, and we've seen it across North Africa. So if we're serious about countering violent extremism, we have to get serious about confronting these economic grievances.
Uh-oh, seems like the president is doubling down on what State Department spokesman Maria Harf said yesterday and has been getting a lot of flack for. Yep, that appears to be the case.
Here at this summit, the United States will make new commitments to help young people, including in Muslim communities, to forge new collaborations in entrepreneurship and science and technology. All our nations can reaffirm our commitment to broad-based development that creates growth and jobs, not just for the few at the top, but for the many.
Well, as you can imagine, the New York Post totally agreed with the president. Let's look at the cover today. Okay, maybe not. What does ISIS think? As you can see the cover there, Islamic terror, I just don't see it. Boy, they get more creative every day. In the latest edition of a popular ISIS magazine, Dabik it is pronounced, a spokesman said, and I quote, Islam is religion of the sword. Muslims will continue beheading non-believers until Jesus slays the Antichrist. That's nice. The cover of the magazine seems to follow suit. There it is, sword, green background. They're very advanced as far as media goes. We've seen that with ISIS in their videos as well. Meanwhile, as we pointed out before, the president's approval on the handling of ISIS continues to sink, with a new CBS poll showing 57% of Americans now disapproving of his handling of the situation. We will get to that poll a little bit later in the show, but Rick Unger, does the White House, from a PR standpoint, have a major problem on their hands?
You know, I hardly know where to begin with that commentary. It was unfair from the word go. If you listen to the past two speeches, this morning's and yesterday's, he absolutely kept referring to radical Islamic terrorists. Now, if you think that we are in a battle with all of Islam, then I guess that's what you think. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we're in a battle with radical Islam. And you know that I've been critical of the president for not, for this great fear he has of using the words, radical Islamic terrorist. I think he should have. I think it's become a diversion, and I think it's silly. But you've got to be fair. Look, the public is going to remain unhappy with him, as they should, until he comes up with a new strategy. As I consistently say, he had a strategy. It didn't work. We did not deplete their numbers. They're going up. Didn't work. So now we need a new one. And until he comes up with one and puts it into effect and we see some success, people aren't going to be happy, and they shouldn't be.
Carl, you see that New York Post cover. Was it fair?
But I think absolutely it was fair, because, I mean, look, these guys are sitting in their cave, beating their head against the wall, saying, why won't he even call us what we want to be called? And then, you have Eric Holder going out on his way out the door. I don't even know why they're giving that guy any camera time anymore. But they said, oh, well, if Fox News didn't talk about this, they'd have nothing to talk about. Well, you know what? Who cares? That's fine. We're trying to label it, because you can't defeat an enemy you don't label. But
why?
Because and let's say we don't label it. Go ahead and just fight it anyway in the meantime, and then we'll label it later. But I think that the cover was completely fair. I think is very accurate, because he doesn't see it for what it is.
Ellis, do you think that the president's trying to be sensitive towards all under the Islamic umbrella to not cause any sort of pushback from moderates in Islam? In other words, is he trying to be a little bit too sensitive here, or do you think it's the right play?
I don't think it has anything to do with being sensitive. I think it's about being smart, right? I mean, all these slogans are easy, right? We all agree ISIS is terrible. We should try and find some smart way to deal with it. But clearly, the cliches aren't working, right? We don't want to send 500,000 troops there. I think most of us agree about that. Well, most Americans aren't with you on that. If you think he's got trouble with 55%, go see how many people want to do another 10 years with hundreds of thousands of troops in the Middle East. You and 3 other people may be the extent of that list.
Well, you'll be a little surprised here. I don't know that I'd go with 500,000, but the point that I keep making is it may be the same land, but it's a different war, and Americans have to stop.
You know what? And you know what? We have to deal with it a little more smartly this time. For instance, why don't we arm people over there who will do it? Why don't we
end up fighting them every decade?
You know what? And we suck at that. We're not good at that,
but
and we don't know how to leave. We don't know how to leave.
But you know what we're good at? This country has always been good at confronting evil. And this is my objection to the way this whole thing's playing out in terms of the debate. We're being sidetracked. These guys are evil. I want every single one of them dead.
But let's do something that'll work.
But the U.S. is good at doing
Bombs and
evil.
ground troops.
But I agree.
Guess what?
It's not Afghanistan.
Guess what?
Same land, different war.
Guess what? I have a surprise. We're actually going to continue this discussion because it's so good. We're going to have to pick it up right after the break. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by Rick Unger, Carl Higbee, and Ellis Hennigan. While we have a former Navy SEAL here, we have to talk about the fight itself against ISIS. A few weeks ago, the president was clear about going to war with ISIS, albeit with no ground troops.
The resolution we've submitted today does not call for the deployment of U.S. ground combat forces to Iraq or Syria. It is not the authorization of another ground war, like Afghanistan or Iraq. The 2,600 American troops in Iraq today largely serve on bases. And yes, they face the risks that come with service in any dangerous environment, but they do not have a combat mission. They are focused on training Iraqi forces, including Kurdish forces. As I've said before, I'm convinced that the United States should not get dragged back into another prolonged ground war in the Middle East.
Well, a growing majority of Americans disagree with Mr. Obama. A new CBS poll finds, get your calculators out, 65% of Americans view ISIS as a major threat. That's up 58% since October. While 86% of Republicans, no surprise there, 61% of Democrats and 57% of independents view ISIS as a major threat. Here's the big news, though, Mr. Unger. For the first time, a majority of Americans, 57%, favor the U.S. sending ground troops into Iraq in Syria. Now, this is why this number is amazing, because context is everything. In October, Americans were divided, 47 for, 46 opposed. And in September, those numbers were reversed. 39 favored, 55 opposed. Now that number is upside down. Carl, ground troops? Are they needed? You said last segment, yes.
Absolutely.
How many is the question?
Well, you know, maybe 500,000 might be a little bit much at first.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
You know what?
Go on for 4.
Go big or go home. Yeah, I have 450,000. No, but I mean, we need to think about if we're going to send ground troops in, we have to learn the lessons from the last war, which were the rules of engagement that tied our troops. I was involved in a court-martial for prisoner abuse for something that didn't happen, and it was all for political appeasement. We have to go in to fight this war to win, like we did in World War II. We went in there and we bombed and we left ruins and crying widows, as Ralph Peters said on Fox News. And we need to make sure that we are fighting this war in our best interest, not the host nation anymore. We can't play this tit for tat and the political correctness now. If we're gonna do this, we have to commit, and we have to get other countries behind us. We can't fight it alone.
Commit? 10 years wasn't enough? Hundreds of thousands of troops wasn't enough? I'll tell you the lesson we should learn from last time.
It's not the same war.
I will tell you, and I will tell you the lesson to learn. Don't do anything like that ever again.
So no
it
ground
failed.
troops.
It made the situation worse when we got out. We can't leave, and things are worse, and we've created an entire new generation of people who want to kill us. Don't do anything like that ever again.
Wait, you're missing something. I got to say this. And
join me with don't, by the way.
But wait, you know that I'm not exactly your. I hated the Iraq War. I think Afghanistan was the way.
So what happened to you, Rick?
Because this is not the same war. I would never change how I feel about Iraq. You can't, just because it's on the same land does not make it the same war.
Agreed.
We were being invaders as far as I was concerned when it came to Iraq. And nobody asked for our help.
How will we be treated the next time?
You know what?
You know what?
When you have the UAE and you have the Jordanians, and now you're going to have the Egyptians. In other words, Arab allies who have never. Well, let me finish. Arab allies who have never really been allies. They just take our money. But now we have an opportunity to stand up for them. We'll improve the security for Israel if we're successful. And these people are evil.
Let me give you a better
What
strategy.
do you propose as your solution?
Let me give you a better strategy. First of all, some of your SEAL guys could actually be helpful here. I mean, there is a role for special forces, and the SEALs at the top of the list there. Sending in, in fact, I think some of them are
with
there.
a SEAL
I don't
team
know
comes
you're
thousands of support troops. That's how we roll.
But you know what? But it's a very different from an invasion of hundreds of thousands of troops. That is not the way special forces are used in this country. It's not the way they ought to be used.
Do you think that the only way to win this war is to kill them, or is there other
killing is probably the least effective. Honestly, it's
okay,
part of the
wrong,
equation.
That's fine.
Well, it's part of the equation.
See, you're making them mutually exclusive, and they aren't.
You're right about that.
The things the president's been saying aren't wrong. They're just not it alone.
You cannot.
You do have to kill them, but you also have to do these other things.
In the end, guys, when you have an organization on the other side that is as effective as at recruiting as the Islamic State people are, you can keep killing and they'll keep getting more of them. We need a smarter strategy. In the end, honestly, we need to convince them that blue jeans are better than burqas, that the American way is better than the way of darkness.
But they don't want
and no matter how many
ideology.
people you kill, you're not going to win.
We've been trying to impose that since the Crusades, and you know we've been trying to impose some sort of Christian beliefs and Judeo-Christian.
Talk about the Crusades. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying.
Sorry.
Actually, until a couple of years ago, it was working pretty well.
They're radical, and they're going to keep coming whether we go in there or not. And the only difference is if we kill them, they're not going to be there to kill us.
Well, their brothers will, and their cousins will, and their kids will.
They will. You're right, but it's still all of the above. And I'll tell you something else that got missed in today's speech in particular. You go through that speech again. You know what the president was talking about? A propaganda campaign. Who's ever fought a successful war without a successful propaganda campaign? And everybody came down on him from the other side, and I'm going, what are you coming down on? What he's sitting there proposing is high-quality propaganda.
Because, Rick, I can sit here right now, and you guys could too, and you can make a case, you can make an effective case as to why the Western, open, democratic, modern approach is a better way to live. And we haven't made that case very effectively.
We have made that case. We went in there, we nation built, and we gave them everything we could. We tried to impose democracy, and guess what? It failed.
So you want to do it again?
No, I want to go in there and fight the war on our terms and actually kill bad guys.
A good propaganda campaign is important to any war
It's
effort.
important with an action force.
It's not. I agree. It's not against the rules for you to say, yeah, he has it right on that.
I will admit that I think that is a good addition to
my job is done here. Good night, folks.
Carl, let's say you're president,
yeah,
and you send in X amount of troops. Let's say 300,000.
Okay.
Okay, and you have all the other countries that are involved, not just European allies, but Jordanians and Egyptians and so on.
Right.
When the fight is won, Right, and I think that would be probably fairly swift because
Oh yeah, that happened quickly last time, didn't it?
Well, that was because
not
of rules of
the
engagement. We didn't get to
anymore.
fight on
Just
our
a
terms.
minute. We'll
We
be
need to
there just
fight-
a minute.
We need to fight on
I
our
was trying to
terms.
get to a point.
Yeah.
And the point is that now do you stay and re-nation build within Iraq and Syria, or you wipe them out and you say thanks, good luck,
You lay
and
it on the
goodbye?
surrounding nations, and that becomes part of the strategy. We can't stay over there and nation build in our interest. We need to lay on them. I mean, sure, we stayed in Germany. We're still in Japan. I mean, we've had long-term occupancy, and I'm sure we will. But the ultimate idea is you need to have people in the region who know the ideology, who live the customs, help rebuild that nation into something positive. We can't do it alone. But we can certainly go in there and stop these people dead in their tracks with our American
one
military
thing,
might.
we're not fighting
Final
a
word.
nation. This is where I say same land, different war. There should not be a nation building situation because we are
There's no
not
nation.
fighting a nation. We are fighting these creepy, sick you-know-whats who are cutting off the heads of children.
Yep.
When we kill them, get the heck out.
And that's the final word on that topic. Good debate, gentlemen. Coming up next on the wrap, we're going back to Ferguson, Missouri. Why? Well, because Eric Holder might be. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody. So does the president love America? Well, according to former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, that answer is no. At a private group dinner in New York earlier this week at the Venerable 21 Club, which, by the way, has tremendous steaks, Rick. I don't know if you've visited there before, but the
I
porterhouse
have,
is excellent.
And it is excellent.
yes.
I
Pretty
agree.
good.
Okay.
I've
Anyway,
never been
It's pretty good.
this
You guys
dinner
are-
was
I don't like
featuring
flat.
Wisconsin governor and likely presidential candidate Scott Walker. Mr. Giuliani said, we don't have tape, but we have the quotes. I do not believe, and I do know this is a horrible thing to say, but I do not believe that the president loves America. He doesn't love you, and he doesn't love me. He wasn't brought up the way you and I were brought up, and I was brought up through love of this country. Carl Higbee, let's start with you. Do you agree with the former mayor?
I generally believe that the president does not love this country. As he said, I want to he said, I want to fundamentally transform America, and I don't believe he loves this country. I think
Before you guys jump in, do you think the influence of Reverend Wright and sitting 20 years in those pews, where Reverend Wright also spoke about chickens coming home to roost and didn't seem to love the country all that much, do you think that had an influence on him? Why doesn't he love the country, I guess is my question.
I think the ideology of a free nation, the freedom we enjoy, he doesn't embrace. I mean, he essentially, and you guys are going to kick me on this, he wants socialism.
You know, this
he does.
This is a psychiatric problem, honestly. This is not
I'm
a
the
political issue. No,
okay.
this is
Well, you're welcome for your freedom with my psychiatric
anyone
problem.
who can look at someone who has a different political outlook and question their patriotism, their morality, their decency.
Yeah.
It reflects on the speaker.
You
really.
better
It is
know
not,
that person.
It is
I
not
don't
this
think so.
idea of being able to look at somebody on television and saying what's in their heart.
Yeah.
That is seriously. That's something. Talk to a therapist about
I think
that.
I've been
That's
very
not a
fair towards
healthy
the
thing.
president tonight.
Yeah,
Carl
except,
seems
but that
like
was,
a pretty
that was horrible.
sound-minded guy. Now,
Who does?
I said Carl.
Carl,
Oh,
the guy sitting
Carl,
next
yeah,
to you.
I think Carl's
Rick,
sound-minded.
give me a second. Give me a second.
That's not a healthy way to react.
I'm just saying, Rudy Giuliani doesn't make outlandish statements very
Well, that
often.
was stupid.
He
That
said
was-
himself that he was
stupid.
about to make an outlandish
Horrible.
statement. Usually, if you have to
he-
start out by saying what I'm about to say is horrible,
Don't say
you
it.
ought to not
Don't
say
say it, right.
And Carl, look, you know, here's what's so funny about it. Let's pretend that you're right.
Right.
That Barack Obama wanted to turn this into a socialist country. All evidence to the contrary after 6
All
years.
evidence. To
Yeah.
place one of those bits of evidence.
Well,
What
the
is he?
stock market's doing really well. That doesn't typically
Despite
work in
his
a socialist
overregulation.
country.
Who has
Whatever.
more to- who
But
has
wait,
more
wait,
to
wait,
love
wait,
for
but
America
let me
than Barack
let me
Obama?
get to
My
my
gosh.
point. If he thought that was best for the country, even though I would appreciate that you completely disagree,
Right.
if he thinks that he's doing what's best for his country, he loves his country. You just don't like what he thinks is right for the country. Can't you see? Did you and your wife
But-
ever have an argument over something important?
Yeah, and if she
You
would
still
just
love your
realize,
wife?
if she just realized I was right,
Right,
it'd
but
be a
do
lot
you
easier.
still
so.
love your wife?
Absolutely.
Okay, my point is made.
But here's the problem: is you don't say you want to fundamentally transform something
Why?
when you take office, because guess what? If he loved our country as it was, he wouldn't fundamentally want to transform it.
What did you say was to fundamentally transform?
Yeah, I don't even know.
remember
But
that. What's that quote?
I'll go along with it. I don't think he did
I don't
either,
think
but
he
I'll
said-
go
I mean, he
along
said
with it.
that. saying that.
It
I don't
doesn't
remember that.
matter because if you want to
It's-
do something positive for your country, which
Rick,
you may
Rick,
disagree
here's the-
with,
Rick, here's
you
the
love your
problem. Rick,
country.
here's
Oh,
the
by the
problem.
way, then Rudy went on TV today and says, "I don't question that he's a patriot."
Right.
Well,
Here's
that
the-
clears it up, doesn't it?
You know what? Here's the problem. There is something, and it is encouraged by these kinds of conversations. The notion that if someone disagrees with me, be.
Right.
They must either be an idiot
Or racist or
or
something.
nuts.
Or hate their country.
Frankly, that really is a psychiatric problem. It is an
don't think so at all.
inability to recognize
Well, we're gonna
that
call the
reasonable
doctor. We've got him
people,
on- we've got him
intelligent
on
people
standby.
Oh,
can
thank
have
you. I
different
appreciate
views
that.
about
My
stuff.
PTSD.
Carl,
right?
do you think that, since being a member of the military, is that feeling prevalent throughout the military, that the president, the commander-in-chief, doesn't love his country?
Absolutely. Well, the Military Times published an article saying that north of 75% of the military does not support the president. And these are the people who are
different. That's something different.
We're different?
You can vote against somebody. You can vote
No,
not
that
support
doesn't
somebody's
mean they don't
policy.
love him.
That doesn't
It
mean
means
they
they
think
don't
he
agree
hates
with
the
him.
country.
A lot of
Can't you
people.
draw a distinction?
I tell you, everybody I served with, last one person at my team, hated the president, thought he was destroying the country. Not said thought he was hating it, thought he was destroying it. I mean, it is not favorable in the military community of what he's doing to the country.
How does that speak to whether or not he loves his country? How have you gotten in his head to make that determination?
Because-
you can think what he's doing is terrible for the country. That doesn't mean he doesn't love his country.
If you, I mean,
I go back to the wife example. I disagree with
I
my
think that's a
wife on
poor
things.
example.
I still love my wife. I don't question that she loves me just because we disagree.
Yeah, but if your wife goes out and cheats on you, wouldn't that make you question?
Yeah, but he hasn't gone out and
He's
cheated.
been
You just don't agree
he's been
with that.
unfaithful to the American way.
Oh, please.
He is trying to undermine some of the
You
fabric of our moral fiber.
There's a basic thing here.
I'll tell you what, in
Yeah.
2 years, if he tries to keep the office and stages an uprising,
Yeah.
I'll come
Like
back
Rudy
on here.
Giuliani-
and-
like Rudy
I'll come-
Giuliani did, by the way, with Big Mayor. He wanted
I'll
to
come
stay
back
beyond
and
his
agree
term.
with you. Otherwise,
Deal.
it makes
Deal.
no sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Deal.
Giuliani stayed because September 11th came and he
Because
felt it was right
the
to
city
stay in
couldn't
office
li-
longer.
The city couldn't live without him.
because
At that time, they were in a
Turned out
state
it
of
wasn't
emergency,
true.
But if
Ellis.
he loved,
Turned out it
if he
wasn't
loved
true.
the city, he wouldn't think so much of himself that he would decide to change the rules. Now, I didn't mind that Rudy Giuliani stayed on. I thought he was a good mayor. In fact, it amazes me
great
that I
mayor.
once thought that he'd be a good president.
did
I
not
can't
say
believe what's happened to him. He knows better, which is why he went on TV this morning.
And we'll have to wrap it up there. And coming up next, it's the Daily Wrap Potluck. And this is the Daily Wrap, of course, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the show, everybody. It's potluck time. This is the part of the show where each of us brings a story to the table, just like you would bring a dish to a potluck dinner. Rick Unger, you're our lead chef.
So, I've kind of spent a career writing terrible things about Walmart because they didn't have the shirt I wanted. No, because they have never paid their employees the way that they should. And this has always been a problem. They're a huge employer, and I think they have just a huge impact on hurting people. But today they announced they are raising their base pay from $7.50, which is the current legal minimum wage, to $9 in April, and then to $10 next February. And I wanted to call them out and give them some credit for that. Now, it's not all about finally deciding they're nice people. It's much more about the fact of what it tells us about the job market. What they're coming to understand is that there are better jobs out there. I've heard so many people say to me, hey, if you don't like your job at Walmart, go get a different one. Well, the truth is you couldn't, but now you can. And that's why they're starting to raise their prices. But either way, I'm glad to see it. I hope the nation will follow suit and raise the minimum wage.
Ellis, I have a feeling that you agree with Walmart's move today.
Well, yeah, and I recognize the cynicism of it, right? This isn't because they love their people. I mean, they're still fighting unions. They're still squeezing their vendors to the screaming point. But yeah, it's a very positive thing. It reflects the economy is getting better. And you know what? Some of those protests and some of those objections that have been raised by Walmart employees and their representatives actually are working. Go Costco, by the way. They did a better job.
I'll
Costco does a
maintain the
much
fact
better
that
job.
some of the Walmart employees just aren't worth more than minimum wage.
Well, but that's why
Period.
they're doing it.
Hire
They want to
someone
have
good.
better
Yeah.
employees.
So, well, hopefully you're
You know,
right.
if you don't pay somebody a livable wage, you're right.
Yeah.
You're not going to work
Hopefully-
that way.
And you know,
Hopefully
we're
you're
the
right.
ones who pay for that eventually because
bet.
they're back on food stamps. They're not having
Exactly.
proper health
We're
care.
paying
We're
for
paying
it.
for it.
When they threw everybody off of health insurance, where did they go? They went to Medicaid. Who
Exactly.
pays for that? We do.
Yeah.
So you
Yep.
have this wealthy corporation. We're picking up their bills.
We see some video on here now, and you see a lot of posters that say $15. $15.
I'm for it.
You'd go all the way to 15.
Well, for a very simple
and then
reason.
pay $12 for a cheeseburger.
Well, no, the problem is that as it currently stands, even at $10 an hour, you come below the federal poverty. level. If you're working full-time, you should not be below the federal poverty line.
But here's the issue with that is, at what point does it become less expensive for the companies, as they are doing in Connecticut now, to replace that employee with an LCD screen or technology that is never late, doesn't have an attitude, and doesn't have an error?
You know what? You're right about that, but you want to know something? For years, we've all talked about it was science fiction. Someday, technology will replace us. Well, we have to quit pretending that it didn't happen and learn to adapt to it. The reason it's going to happen is not because we charge too much money. It's because it's time for that to happen. Let's be realistic about it and solve the problem by training people to do jobs where it can't be a screen.
I just wonder what kind of precedent this will set as far as other large companies are concerned. Because we saw that with CVS and they stopped selling cigarettes, and then other pharmacies followed suit. Walmart, obviously one of the big boys out there. We'll see what other large companies do as well. So our second course, Carl, go ahead.
The State Department's comment on jobs, and then the poverty line of why ISIS is why ISIS is actually as terrible as they are, is because they don't have jobs, and we need to understand them and give them employment opportunities. I think is the biggest load of BS I have ever heard. And if I've ever thrown anything at my television, that was the night I did it when I saw that, and I couldn't.
Wasn't an HD.
It is. It was a nice. Fortunately, it didn't break, but it was what was left of my sushi.
Because you would have had that issue with your wife we were talking
Exactly.
about.
Elvis used to shoot his screen.
Elvis did.
He did, right?
I have a neighbor, so if it goes,
Yeah, good point. Well, you have
TVs
good.
were a lot fatter in those days.
Right. I would imagine you have very good aim, though, so you wouldn't hit them.
Yeah, I mean,
But go ahead.
the fundamental issue here is you can. Goes back to any version of nation building or anything. Terrorism is in fact because of the Islamic radical wing of the Muslim ideology, and it's not because they don't have jobs, and that's a real insult to all the people under the poverty line here in America, less making minimum wages. I mean, are they going to go out and strap a bomb on and blow themselves up? No, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. She should be fired.
Actually, Jen Psaki, Jen Psaki, who you went to school with, we understand, actually got a promotion today, and she's going to be the White House Communications Director. So I have a feeling that Marie Harf probably will be promoted as well, just by
get used to
there she is now.
Fantastic.
Looks like she'll be running a pledge class over at Kappa Alpha Theta in Lehigh. But hey, she's moving up the food chain, no question about it.
I bet she was pretty popular there in high school.
Let me comment on your. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, because obviously, look, if anything proves your point, it's the fact that a huge percentage of the 9/11 terrorists came from families that were millionaires. And
were highly educated.
And were highly educated. So I agree. However, you can't, as I said earlier, it's not mutually exclusive. Look, if you grow up poor and you don't have any self-respect, a good way to get it is to put a gun in your hand and convince yourself you're fighting for a noble cause.
Right.
So what they're proposing is not a bad thing, it's just not the only thing.
It's not realistic.
Well, it's
Let's
only
be
partially, yeah.
And we see that in America, actually, in so many inner cities, right, guys, where unfortunately have used joining gangs because they want to be a part of something. Anyway, up next we have more potluck, that's right, including mine. So it's time for Yay and Nay after that as well. This is the fun part of the show, and this is the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV from chilly New York City. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody. It's still potluck time, and we have another newcomer, Ellis Hennigan. What do you got?
Nice to be here with you guys, by the way.
I'm
Very
having
spirited
fun.
group,
I'm
right?
having fun.
Friendly atmosphere.
Where do you hide the shy people?
Shy people? We don't need no stinking shy people.
I want to stand up for fat kids, if I may.
You may, being not a fat kid.
It is. I was reading in the Lancet, the British medical journal, as I so often am in the afternoons. I like to peruse the Lancet, as you know.
Good for you.
But the fascinating story, 6-part series, has just begun today, and I'll recommend it to everybody. That points out that all the things we have been trying lately against childhood obesity, which is an epidemic, I don't have to remind you. Now 1/3 of American children are either overweight or obese. They're not working. We try and talk them into eating better. We suggest better things. The Lancet scientists have gotten together and said there really is one thing that's going to work. Tax fast food exorbitantly. Let's do the same thing to the fast food restaurants that we've done to the cigarettes that Rick used to smoke, and actually make it so that fast food isn't so cheap and appealing to families. And give, you know what, if you need to give them extra money to buy the healthy food, do that, but let us help American families make that choice right. We will save young lives if we do it. You go Lancet.
Wow. What about, middle class folks that eat it sometimes? I mean, should they be penalized? Folks like
what?
you or me that are actually somewhat thin.
If we eat it once in a while, it won't be such a big penalty.
Yeah, but
the problem is that we eat it all the damn time, and those poor kids are doing it and killing themselves.
You can't. This is an attempt to legislate personal responsibility, and I think that the issue here is not that we should tax fast food, but look at gym classes. Nowadays, you have little Johnny's too fat, so everybody has to play cards instead of playing football like they used to 20 years ago. I think it's a societal devolvement, and also the fact that if you're fat, we're supposed to accept you for it. Guess what? If you're fat, get on a treadmill, get off in April, and then you're fixed.
Here's the problem with it, though. I mean, I
like societal devolvement. I have to say. That was pretty good.
Here's the problem. The sermons aren't working, right? I mean, when these numbers just keep going up and up and up, and we pay for it. It isn't just that the little Johnny is being made fun of at Greenwich High.
Yeah, but they hold everyone down to it. So
it's that all of us pay the huge health costs.
Can we call it the McDonald's doctrine?
I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
I like that.
I'm good with it as long as we can call it that.
And let's charge $20 a Big Mac. What do you say?
Can you name the ingredients in a Big Mac?
How much will the fries
To
be?
all
Special
beef
special
patties,
sauce,
special
another
sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed
Bunch,
bun.
you've been eating too much of it. Clearly, it's
Boom,
going to cost
boom.
you, buddy.
I know.
We're going to tax
gonna
your
cost
fat.
Can I tell you, I only eat it once a year, and I always get the Big Mac.
It tastes good, right?
I haven't had
It's
a
tremendous,
McDonald's
but
in
there's
so
such
many
regret
years.
afterwards.
Guy.
A Wendy's
It
guy?
just-
Wendy's were good.
So much more fat in it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Wendy's.
Yeah, I don't go Wendy's. The square burger thing just doesn't
Actually,
quite do it
if
for
you're
me.
going to do it, In-N-Out Burgers on the West Coast.
Boom.
Shake
Say no
Shack,
mo.
my
Yeah.
friends. Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Yuppie.
Anyway,
I don't eat it fast food anymore.
Good.
And I'm still fat.
You're eating into my meal time
so
right
sorry.
now.
You just
I'm
got to
so sorry.
Nonsensical
come to the gym
talk.
with me, Rick.
What you
and we're
got,
good.
man?
Anyway, so I had a potluck tonight, and during commercial, I wanted to make sure that the potluck was still relevant because it was kind of a fluid story. So on Mediaite, that's the website that I write for, we reported earlier today that our sources said that Joy Reid on MSNBC, 2 p.m., was going to be canceled. However, Ronan Farrow was going to be able to keep his job. Now, what made this interesting was that Ms. Reid, albeit these numbers are both low, but her numbers were slightly better than Mr. Farrow's. Both were horrible, don't get me wrong. And just 2 weeks ago, Ronan Farrow got 11,000 in the demo. That's a very hard thing for a network with MSNBC's reach to do, where only 11,000 people between the ages of 18 and 54, or excuse me, 25 and 54 in the cable world, were actually watching. So when I heard that Ms. Reid was getting fired, but Ronan was keeping his job, I said, boy, MSNBC has a problem on their hands because they're firing the higher rated person who happens to be an African American, but they're keeping around Ronan Farrow, who may or may not be the son of Frank Sinatra. So sure enough, during commercial break, I checked, and yes, MSNBC has axed Ronan Farrow. See, we break news on this program.
But
Isn't
not
that
Joy
nice?
Reid?
Joy Reid is also gone.
By the way, I think you may be the first person to call him Mr.
Mr. Farrow?
He's like 12 years
He's
old.
a little,
right?
yeah.
He is 26 years
Mr.
old.
Farrow.
He was.
Huh? Yeah.
He doesn't exist any longer, so.
So he's wiped off the
Yeah,
map.
yeah. So I guess what we have to do here is turn into a panel discussion and a eulogy to Ronan Farrow, who now, since the media guy, I can tell you, Phil Griffin, the MSNBC president, met him for 20 minutes and said, "That's my guy." No experience whatsoever, even community access he didn't have, and they gave him an hour of network television. Ellis, 10 seconds.
I'm jealous.
Quick enough, Carl.
I mean, you guys give me airtime, and I had virtually no experience either. So
You didn't host a show, however.
Shows. No, I'm
true.
kidding.
Right.
Thanks,
Rick, you
thanks,
go on
Frank.
MSNBC
Now,
sometime.
you know what? Here's the reality, folks. MSNBC is screwing it up because they won't admit something that I will gladly admit. The people who watch cable news are old like me. And they're not going to watch Ronan Farrow, who is 19 years old.
Particularly at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when they're either in class or they're doing something else.
It's
right?
just, they're kidding themselves.
And that's true. So, okay, well, you heard it here first, guys. The 1 and 2 o'clock shows on MSNBC. Joy Reid at 2, Ronan Farrow at 1. Gone.
Are we all going to go right?
But we're still here. After the break, it's time for Yay or Nay. Stay tuned. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV.
but I don't.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's time for Yay or Nay. This is the part of the show where I share a crazy news story with the panel, and they vote yay or nay. All right, first up. A young Indian couple was in the middle of their wedding when the groom suddenly had, get this, a seizure. And rather than be concerned for his health and make sure he was okay, the bride was furious that she didn't know he suffered from this disorder beforehand. So what's a bride to do when her fiancé has a surprise epileptic seizure in the middle of their wedding? Well, find a new groom, of course. Now, this really happened. That's right. The not-so-picky bride turned to his brother-in-law, and asked him to set in, which he did. No dating and a free wedding without dealing with the whole invitation nonsense beforehand. Count me in. When the groom finally came to and realized that his wife had married another man, he and his family asked her to reconsider, but she refused. So what happened? Well, the groom's family reportedly turned to violence, throwing plates and even knives, apparently. No one was hurt. 2 guests were arrested, however. Replacing your sick groom in the middle of your wedding. Yay or nay, Ellis?
Yay, finally a fun wedding. And listen, we all know the groom really is kind of an afterthought at most weddings, and this just proves it a little more dramatically than at my own.
Perfectly put.
I got nothing on this one, dude. This is wild.
You have to answer something. You're a Navy SEAL. Be definitive. Okay.
Yep.
Down, nay.
Seizure boy dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
It's
married her
true.
anyway, right?
He gets to keep the 50% that she eventually
That's
would have
right.
proposed her
And
to.
what the heck
Okay.
did he want her for?
I say yay.
And as she gets older and fatter, and his brother's stuck with her, what a great deal of pleasure that will be for many
seriously.
years to come.
The guy who stepped in, though, boy, he's not picky or anything, is he? Anyway, looking for a job is never fun. Sending out countless resumes and going on interview after interview after interview can be downright torture. Trust me, I know. Well, one Australian-based app company, it's called Appster, has taken the interview process to a whole new level. After realizing that almost half of their new hires don't quite work out as they hoped, the company completely revamped their hiring practices. First, they sit around and dream up their ideal employee, and the HR department screens thousands of applicants through phone interviews, narrowing down the group to a top 20 or 10% who fit the bill. Then there's the competency test, in which candidates have to score in the top 5th percentile. Next comes the dreaded interview, where one of 2 interviewers focuses only on the applicant's body language, really. And if they pass that test, they might get asked to work a half a day so the company can get a feel of how they will be on the job. And that's for free, of course. Add it all up, and the interview process is about 15 hours and requires 22 plus hours of work per candidate for the company itself. So, that was exhausting to read, by the way. Imagine going through the interviewing process. Ellis, a 15-hour interview process,
Nah, don't work there. That's the message.
Yeah.
I say yay, smart company.
Really?
And they get 22 hours of work for free. You gotta love it.
So you go nay on that as well.
I'm going nay on that. I think that is just a poor cycle.
Well, actually, do we know how it's worked out?
Ultimately, they'll discourage
How do you
people
mean?
from applying.
Are they happy with the employees they've gotten through this process?
Apparently, yes,
Well,
because
see.
they keep
Well,
doing
then
it.
if it's working, it's working.
There you go.
I think they'll ultimately decrease their pool, though.
I'm still
Yeah,
against.
they probably will. I am a nay as well, because the compensation package is not worth going through that sort of process. Anyway, Robert Matthew Van Winkle, we all knew who that is. Vanilla Ice. Yes, Vanilla Ice has been arrested. Do you guys remember him? It was only a short 25 years ago. This song came out.
Let's kick it. Ice, ice, baby. Ice, ice, baby. All right, stop. Collaborate and listen.
Yes, the one-time rapper termed home improver was taken into custody after allegedly stealing items from the house next door to the property he was renovating in Florida. Van Winkle, sorry Vanilla Ice, I just love saying that name, is being charged with burglary and grand theft. He's not quite as blonde as he used to be either. This will affect his chances of making a comeback. Yay or nay, Rick Unger? You're from the entertainment industry.
Well, I say nay because he had no chance of making a comeback. So no
Good point.
impact.
Good point,
You
Carl.
took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, when your career's as booming as it currently was for him, you don't commit
Hey, listen, he's
burglary.
got a TV show, doesn't he?
Well, he did.
Some kind of
maybe.
home improvement
Maybe
show.
he had
Where
one.
he was-
Be
home
honest.
improvement.
Be honest. If you hire a contractor, you'd want him to steal stuff from the house next door to work on your house, right?
Well, I'm not going to talk about it. I know somebody who did that.
Nay, nay, baby for me myself. Okay, so do me a favor. Picture the happiest place in the world for a moment. You're probably picturing a beautiful, warm, sunny beach. I'm picturing Seagirt, New Jersey around July 24th or so. Were any of you thinking of Alaska? Well, maybe you should. Live Science just came out with their list of the top 10 happiest states in the country for 2014. And for the first time ever, Alaska came in at number 1. Hawaii was number 2. State scores are based on interviews about health, finances, relationships, community, and purpose. Ellis, quickly, yay or nay, moving to Alaska?
I don't believe it. Maybe they're just drunk all the time up there. That's the only. They're number 1 in alcohol too.
Yeah.
That's a reason to go. Carl?
1 and 2, Alaska and Sarah Palin.
Good point. And Rick?
Carl said it all. Nay.
Well, Obama's from Hawaii, so he can move there.
I
Allegedly.
am a yay, because it's probably warmer in Alaska than it is here. Anyway, panel, thank you so much.
Hey,
You
it's
were
fun.
incredible tonight.
Thanks.
Good friction, good fun. And that's all for the show tonight. This is the Daily Wrap. We'll see you tomorrow night at 6 p.m. This is Joe Concha. Good night.